On April 26, 2020, The Last of Us Part 2 was spoiled and leaked across the internet. To this date, it is unknown whether a struggling employee leaked the game due to stress upon the crunch that Druckmann assigned for him, or a hacker just thought it would be entertaining to do so. What matters was that the leaks were released and Part 2 has put its shoes in the history of gaming as a pivotal moment for video games, showcasing toxic morons and chaos who liked and disliked the game itself. Assuming you already read the leaks, there are 20 inaccurate hypotheses, and 10 of them is actually accurate. The leak is mostly inaccurate and people are being angry because of the leak. It seems highly implausible. Then again, not all people that hate Part 2 are stupid. As a matter of fact, there are jarring issues I have with the game itself, regardless of me immensely enjoying it. I won't be looking at the game as a political standpoint, rather as a product alone. It is an entirely different story if this is judged at a political perspective, especially since I'm not political myself.
Truth is, I don't know why people are mad at this game because they don't know why they're mad.
Wrong! People are mad because of the way the story was handled, such as its ludonarrative dissonance, which betrayed the purpose of the first game. Ellie has been hacking, killing, and torturing multiple people capable of feeling pain and emotion. But when it comes to the cutscenes, it is as if she's new to the grotesque imagery showcased in the horrific situation, which almost if not gives her PTSD. It would be so awesome if the cutscenes were significantly changed when you killed around 2 enemies, and the cutscenes of her doing evil shit has her traumatized. But if you just killed everybody, since the gameplay is actually really fun and shooting enemies in the face with a shotgun is so satisfying, then she would be the monster who made Joel look like a good Samaritan. Except this isn't really the case. I get that Naughty Dog makes Naughty Dog games, for better or for worse. But for a game that is to be taken seriously, this is jarring to see, unlike the Uncharted games. At least the trilogy. The pacing seemed atrocious in my opinion, because it is so disjointed. Why is it so disjointed? Why won't it start with this new character that cries upon a doctor's corpse? No false advertisement here. And then cut to black screen and wait for 10 seconds, and then back to Joel saying stuff like, "I will shoot my daughter all over again cause the game is so good, do replay again." And then blah blah blah, "Wholesome birthday party." Then blah blah blah, Tommy teaching her how to shoot, which serves as a good tutorial on all the basics of combat such as shooting, stealth, and a boss fight, and increases the tension of Ellie slowly acknowledging that Joel is lying. And blah blah blah. Ellie knows, and the tension is heightened, knowing that instead of Joel and Ellie ending up on good terms forever, Joel was then resented by Ellie for almost around 3 years, which breaks our hearts, and hope that Joel won't die in a crappy relationship, and blah blah blah. It goes to Ellie and Dina sharing their first love, where the dialogue works for us to immediately like Jesse and Dina, instead of having a rocky time to get used to the characters. This scene features dialogue that illustrates their character, and yet it was played at the end of the game. Like, what? And knowing that Joel and Ellie are soon going to mend their relationship gives us this lingering hope that they will feature that classic Joel and Ellie adventure again, somewhere in the first chapters. At this point, the game can continue its original pacing, which leads to what was about to happen. The mysterious woman is being saved by Joel and Tommy, which led to the brothers into finding a mansion filled with likable strangers. Wait, how do you make them likable? Remember when Tommy and Joel gave their name to Abby in the middle of escaping the horde? I find that stupid because they should be giving their names when they bonded or they're comfortable to each other. This could be a good excuse for showcasing the friendly nature of Manny, Jordan, Nora, and Whitney as they exchange words with the Miller brothers. And while Abby and Owen were at the background talking and being comforted from the chaotic shit that happened, Tommy introduced themselves to Manny and Jordan, which led to the people they are talking to making a subtle sad face as Abby and Owen in the background are talking privately. And then once Abby has a shotgun behind Joel as he's standing in one spot, Joel got shot on the foot and Tommy got knocked out, and bam, Joel got bonked on the head, and it gave us this shocking impression that these people are snakes and bastards that are incapable of being humane. I used to think that starting this part as old Joel instead, having played sluggishly, then have a conversation with Tommy about giving up his philosophy of only saving your own skin. But the way I mentioned it is enough, since it will most likely portray that Joel and Tommy don't really look like idiots and are tricked as the audience, as we as well accept the comfort of seemingly decent strangers who spout funny yet relatable dialogue, since I am confident that Naughty Dog is capable of writing those dialogue which is present in Uncharted 4. Joel and Tommy's character shift into accepting strangers were showcased during the events of where Joel is looking for the lost teenagers, as well as warming up to Ellie as his own daughter, reclaiming his faith in humanity, while Tommy showed up as the sweet uncle we could have seen with Sarah and Joel, while having the acknowledgement of Joel and Ellie starting to mend their relationship as father and daughter was then shattered by the villain Abby. Instead of having this feeling of Joel being killed so quickly that I actually don't feel as much sad as other people. If there is one thing I immensely agreed with people who hates this game, that's the false advertisement. There is a difference between preventing a spoiler and straight out lying. A good example of this is in Thor Ragnarok. In Thor Ragnarok, Thor's hammer got destroyed and has a clip of him unleashing his power. But they removed some parts, like the area of where the hammer got obliterated and the fact that he lost an eye during his ultra power moment. The message is still there that Thor is gonna kick some ass and deal with the fact that his Mjolnir is shattered, forcing him to gain a new instrument of destruction. In part 2, they filled the hype up with the game being a Joel and Ellie adventure, but this time with old Joe. Like, what? Why the fuck would you do that? To put oil in the fire? I agree that the marketing in this game is pee boo boo, but it isn't enough to make the game classified as an atrocity in my book. A game's quality is dependent upon the product itself. An art or product must be separated from its artist and how it was presented through the media. Now that I'm done ranting on what I find flawed or what other people find extremely bad, here is why I think The Last of Us Part 2 is good, and hating it just seems excessive to the point that I find it really, really toxic. One of my favorite moments in this game, aside from the flashbacks hitting you in the gut like it's a gunshot after replaying it a handful of times, if only the pacing isn't cutting back and forth, was Joel singing to Ellie. The main reason why you're controlling Joel at the first part of the game instead of Ellie, since the game ends with Ellie, was that this introduction is an extended ending of part 1. It's to put a nail on the coffin of Joel's arc of regaining his humanity, making part 1 ending. There most likely won't be a horrific journey for our two iconic duos, as it ends with both of them in Jackson living the life Joel wished for both himself and his new daughter, Ellie. If there is one thing that Naughty Dog's style excels at, which is for better or for worse, was its excessive use of dialogue. Part 1's story is simple, but its complexity was elevated by the performances of the actors and the writer's style of writing upon the dialogue being natural. My suspension of disbelief in a world filled with mushroom zombies was elevated thanks to Neil's writing. I expected the words "bacon sandwich" to feel unnatural and forced according to what people said, but instead, it emphasizes Ellie's character upon how much angst she has developed and how her sarcasm went from funny to just plain rude, even if the person is an asshole, foreshadowing her relationship with Joel, which I am not a fan of, since the intention of its foreshadowing ruins the pacing. I can see why people are not liking Dina as a character, but whoever wrote her banter with Ellie deserves a lot of praise, which is most likely Neil. I expect her relationship with Ellie to be forced, but instead was reinforced with their shared interest of puns and music.
Ellie, I think Shimmer's getting sick. What? How can you tell? She sounds a little hoarse. Oh, boy. Come on, that was a good one.
Which sparks the young, charming, and down-to-earth Ellie we know and loved. Ellie is seen to be this stoic protagonist, incapable of finding peace and happiness, but was able to remain positive thanks to Dina's optimistic companionship. Jesse's fine. I don't really find him interesting when he's with Ellie. He felt more like another muscle, but he also gives depth to Ellie's sexuality.
You're handsome and whatever, but I'm not into your type.
What, Asians?
Yeah, that's obviously what I meant.
Which makes her more likely to be bisexual since she finds handsome guys attractive. It's just that there are more pretty ladies in Jackson, and the only handsome guy in Jackson wasn't her type, which she ends up becoming her best friend. Again, Jesse's bland personality, at least for me, was due to the fact that what is being developed more in this game was the protagonist and the antagonist. I'd say it's worth the sacrifice when it's the main meat of the game. Ellie's quest is selfish and personal because the group never attacked Jackson. They just killed Joel. It would make sense for Ellie to hunt them down when Jackson's community was affected, but really it was just Joel and the people he loves. If Tommy was killed, then it made sense for Jackson to seek revenge as well, knowing that Tommy is the leader of the community, but knowing that Tommy, a leader who is supposed to stay put and protect Jackson, becomes as selfish as Ellie, making Maria the one with a cool head, who most probably becomes the new leader for Jackson at the remaining period of the game. What I don't understand was that they hated Ellie becoming a monster, which is really the point. People change and Ellie changed for the worst because of Joel himself, who started the fire with his lies, which was then fueled by Abby into killing him, stopping her from forgiving him. Ellie doesn't really transform into a monster, but she almost becomes one herself. What stopped her was Lev and Joel. Joel's last moments with Ellie reminds her of what it feels to be human and how she acknowledges that Joel does not want her to avenge him. He is not the avenging type, and rather the sulking protector. He did not kill Robert from the first game for vengeance, and rather to receive the goods that they were promised. Joel retaliates when needed, and Lev brings a reminder that they are not different, as Abby serves as a role model for Lev, while Joel serves as one to Ellie. You can argue that Lev is not involved, but his capability of stopping Abby to kill Dina was what reminds her of what violence and hate stops, which is compassion. The compassion of Lev is a brazier to Abby's moral compass, which might remind Ellie subconsciously that it is their friends and company that redeems their evil intentions, not the act of reducing one's life. Killing one another won't help moving on, rather, an act of letting go is the key to moving on, such as being unable to play the guitar, which helps her forget Joel and move on. One thing I can't wrap my head around was Abby being irredeemable. It is true that she's a piece of shit, but one that is almost no different to Joel. The only difference was that Joel is able to fuck the world up with no hesitance, just to satisfy his own selfishness, yet selfless motivation, which is protecting his loved ones even if it will slowly kill the world, while Abby's horrific personality is revealed upon vengeance. Vengeance is what makes everyone in this game a monster. This is the only game where the protagonist becomes a monster and the monster becomes the protagonist. They both change for the better and for the worst, alternatively. Ellie was a monster until she realized that one of her casualties is pregnant. And Abby was almost a monster capable of doing kindness until one of her friends, who is pregnant, becomes a part of Ellie's massacre, making her wanting to make things even with her until she was then stopped by her companion. People argue that Owen and Mel are evil because they tried to attack Ellie, but remember who pointed the gun first. Ellie would have never made Owen and Mel attack her for self-defense if she never seek vengeance in the first place. The same applies to Abby and her vengeance. If Abby never looked for Joel, Mel and Owen would never be in a bad light as evil people who are trying to protect themselves from a teenager who retaliated first. People are saying Neil hated Joel and made him a moron. They got a point when Tommy just immediately told Abby their names in the middle of a disaster. But if Joel's really portrayed as an idiot, then he would be incapable of protecting Ellie from bloaters, nor being a good father to Ellie. And by good father, I meant in the guitar, giving her a good birthday party. Hell, even some of the people who joined Abby are traumatized from the vengeance. They do not want it. They understood that he deserved it, but Abby is becoming a monster. They are concerned for Abby, and now they are able to see Abby just being a piece of shit, because even her friends are distant towards her. In short, the plot is messy and disjointed, but the story was intriguing. It subverts your expectations into having one of the most unsatisfying ending of letting the villain go, which then leads upon a satisfying conclusion, which is forgiveness and moving on, away from grief. The Last of Us Part 2 provides an unsatisfying ending, but a satisfying conclusion. If the leaks were never released and there was no pandemic, Part 2 will be a huge circle jerk of people saying how much of a masterpiece it was since if you're tired of self-aware silliness of Doom Eternal with its goofy sound effects and ridiculous yet humorous moments, and Animal Crossing's calm and relaxing yet family-friendly progression, then this game will make sure you felt Naughty Dog's most heartfelt and regurgitating piece yet. Angry Joe would be all like, "This game is so good, the combat was not only recycled but given with awesome mechanics such as proning in grass and silencers being emphasized by its level design, and a dodge button. The story was purposefully depressing, making Ellie not only a badass but a monster, being almost as awful if not worse than Joel. And this game looked good, that looked good! The transition to a certain different character is a weird decision, putting you in the shoes of someone else controversial, but it is a welcoming one because they humanize that character with that character's decision being similar to Joel's in the previous game and make the human boss fights much difficult emotionally. And hey, if you couldn't appreciate the character, then you could have fun with the character's fun playstyle, changing the game's survival horror action into a big ass Rambo action shooting gallery. The game is so sad that me and other Joe are crying while sharing with Ellie's angry side and making her and I connect into this revenge. But it is one of the few games where winning makes things bad, as Ellie changes for the worst. My final rating for this game is a 9 out of 10 with a badass seal of approval, tough love because of the pacing issues where there are flashbacks that almost ruin the narrative, but the direction where Druckmann concludes the story is enough to suffice the problems. And the gameplay is so fun with two characters who have two separate playstyles, easily blends both story and combat. Okay. I have nothing against Angry Joe. Actually, I looked up to some of his reviews, especially when I was younger, since I am incapable of having an opinion on anything at all during that time. Now that I'm capable of having my own opinion, even if it tastes like cat food, this is just what I speculate when the plot was never leaked and COVID never existed. Let's be real. Angry Joe isn't really meticulous when it comes to his reviews. He is influenced by hype and bandwagon. If the Star Wars movies weren't universally hated, he is most likely going to be liking as much as the majority do. Do people actually watch his videos because they are detailed and well informed, as Matthew Matosis, Joseph Anderson, Young Ye, Noah Canoe, and so forth? Gamebreaker God, a respected YouTuber who doesn't just prove himself to be the God of War himself, rather, an individual capable of possessing a great amount of common sense, understood why he watches and enjoyed Angry Joe.
Okay, you know what? I watch Young Ye. You guys know who Young Ye? I mean, come on, you probably know. Young Ye is probably one of the best reviewers. Not one of, he's the best reviewer out there. Along Angry Joe Show, because Angry Joe Show makes a parody out of it. It's just funny. But Young Ye is freaking phenomenal. The way he speaks, it sounds poetic. If you like watching reviewers, watch Young Ye.
GBG watches Angry Joe mostly because of the skits and jokes. Angry Joe is a charismatic content creator, no doubt, with a great sense of humor, but his points can be contradictive and manipulated by the majority of people. Even Donkey, a respected YouTuber who is truly capable of providing insightful observations, even if his perception can be flawed, is starting to believe that Angry Joe's credibility is fading slowly.
Obviously, Last of Us 2 was destined to be a masterpiece until the plot got leaked. Then the internet decided that this game was no good.
These spoilers basically show you that the game is not worth buying.
This game is shaping up to be a complete dumpster fire, dude. Like, people are canceling their pre-orders left and right.
I don't even want to fucking play it anymore.
That doesn't mean Angry Joe is incapable of sharing insightful observations. One of my favorite insights he have shared was with his first 10 out of 10 review, which is Red Dead Redemption 1. He was stating what most people are saying, such as the game providing a great narrative, great gameplay, great graphics, except one. He said that Red Dead Redemption 1 is special because it ends without any plans of making a sequel.
It's A-list, and they avoid cliche characters and manage to put together a really engaging story with a satisfying ending. No major hook sequel cop-out ending here.
The game ends with a knockout ending that is not leading to be an ongoing franchise until it does the smartest thing that Rockstar has ever done, making a prequel with the title of a sequel. Because all this stupid shit is happening, it heavily affects everyone and it is difficult to separate your feelings on the game and the world around you when the game is making it worse for anyone who is suffering from the disaster that is going on that period of time. Hell, I'm sure Pro Jared would take his opinion on the gameplay back when a disaster never happens, because you can focus on the game properly since the only negative shit that happens while playing the game is behind a screen that has a muscle girl and an angry teenage girl. I don't know why he never mentioned the level's layout as a big factor on the game's combat system, which is a hide-and-seek guerrilla warfare cat and mouse chase. In conclusion, The Last of Us Part 2 is a masterpiece, released at the wrong time where COVID has not only killed people, but made almost everyone stupid. And no, I do not really mean people who hates the game. I meant the idiots who aren't wearing any mask and are actually destroying Earth, which heavily affects what the video game is trying to express into having people thinking it's just torture porn with no substance. Part 1's replayability depends upon the character's ambiguity. Like, are Tess and Joel a couple? What is Henry and Sam's true past? Was David a monster before the apocalypse? Or did cannibalism and leadership made him insane? On the other hand, Part 2's replayability relied upon the themes of the story and how it's trying to make you feel. Otherness, forgiveness, hate, vengeance, love, and more. Neil Druckmann is wrong about Part 2. It's not about hate. It's about plenty of things. And to know more of what I just mentioned is to be acknowledged through multiple replays. The combat is so diverse that only was Ellie upgraded into having multiple mechanics at her disposal, but enemy variety challenging you into deciding which weapon to use and switch easily gives you no reason to shit on the gameplay. I'm looking at you, Pro Jared. If the leaks never happened and COVID just never existed, the majority would agree that this game is a quote-unquote a masterpiece. If there's really something that I have a pack of salt around this game, it's that the cover is just not good. If the cover of the game looked like this, then this is definitely a certified masterpiece.